Hi, my name is Cheese, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of SteamLUG Cast. With me, I have DerRidda,
Hello.
Nemoder,
Howdy.
and Josh Klint from Leadwerks.
Hello.
Welcome. All right.
Thank you.
We're starting a little bit late. We've had some technical hitches with our Mumble server, which we'll be sorting out. If we have any dropouts, that's why. So please bear with us. John passes on his apologies. He's a bit unavailable at the moment, but hopes that everybody misses him in his absence. Before we get started, DerRidda, what have you been playing lately?
As usual, some more Dota 2, lots of FTL, and after this great, awesome patch, lots of Rising Storm. And you, Nemoder?
I've been playing Factorio. They just released a new trailer, a really neat looking game, and A Tale in the Desert, and Guns of Icarus.
And I've been playing a little bit of the Fall. That went into beta yesterday. I've got access to the alpha version of Crypt of the Necrodancer, which I've managed to get running under Wine. Developers say that Linux build should be about a week away, I think they said, if all goes well. Guns of Icarus Online and some Sanctum 2. And we had that big synergy event the other day as well, which is pretty cool. Josh, have you been playing anything of interest lately?
Sadly, I don't get to play games that often. The last game I played all the way through was Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, which I love.
Nice.
And then I regularly play Left 4 Dead 2. I've got like 800 hours in it. It's ridiculous. For some reason, I just always come back to that.
Awesome.
Are you playing Versus?
What's that?
Are you playing Versus mode in Left 4 Dead 2?
Left 4 Dead 2.
Are we having technical issues here at the moment?
I didn't get that question.
DerRidda was asking if you're playing Versus mode in Left 4 Dead 2.
Versus, of course.
Cool.
So before we move on to our normal content, we might just have a little bit of a chat about Leadwerks. Josh, could you tell us what Leadwerks is for those who have been living under a rock?
Okay, well, the marketing pitch is that Leadwerks is about turning players into makers. And what that kind of means is I'm a PC gamer. My background, I come from sort of the modding communities for like Quake and Half-Life. And so I've always sort of retained that that kind of background. And my attitude is game development should be enjoyable in and of itself, because for me, like using the tools for those things has always been actually enjoyed that more than playing the game sometimes. But anyways, Leadwerks is a game engine focused on the PC, and we just recently brought it to Linux, and there's a lot of stuff happening on the Linux scene right now. Of course, with SteamOS and just the drivers and everything has come a long ways. So we're actually based on the response so far. I'm kind of like focusing in on Linux as my primary platform.
You're developing personally on Linux, are you? Or when you do development, you're developing from Windows?
Well, I tend to do development on what I have in front of me at the moment. I kind of, I use Xcode and Code Blocks and Visual Studio, and there's things that I love about each of them, and there's things that I can't stand about each of them. With like Code Blocks, it's got the absolute best target system, where you set up your different build targets. I wish that Xcode was that simple.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about the history of Leadwerks. It has not always been a full game engine. If I remember correctly, it has started off as graphics middleware for developers to use. So enlighten us a bit.
That's kind of a funny question, and it kind of reinforces some places where it's been weak in the past. I mean, it was a game engine, but it was just way stronger. It was way stronger in graphics than anything else. So the tools were terrible, like for the previous version. It was lacking in a lot of like gameplay features, and it was just kind of left up to the end user. And then with Leadwerks 3, I decided that the tools themselves should really come to the front, and it should be just as good as like the rendering and the programming API. And so I just kind of set out to design a totally new game development system with a totally visual editor, and that took about 3 years to do. yeah, today, I mean, it was kind of it took a step back from where Leadwerks 2 was, because I had to come out with a whole new product. But today we're in like a way better position. I mean, the stuff that people are putting out, people can just tinker around with it in an hour and put out like something with some pretty advanced gameplay. So that all of that work has really paid off.
So, Josh, how did you get to see Linux as a valid target? What made it attractive for you?
That's an interesting story because historically I'm not a Linux guy. I'm not gonna like try to tell a story about like I'm totally original gangster Linux because I'm just not. And my background is primarily on Windows, and the thing that really made Linux attractive is I'm a PC gamer, and Microsoft has sort of been treating PC gaming pretty badly ever since the Xbox came out. After 3.0 was released, I had a bunch of my users asking me for Linux support, and it's funny because my perception of Linux has changed so much in the last 12 months. Because when people were telling me that I should make a Linux build, I was like, no way, people don't want to buy that. It's not open source, it's not free. Why would I want to do that? And so I said, my community just kept bugging me about it, and so I said, okay, I'll give this a chance. We'll do a Kickstarter campaign, and I put the Kickstarter campaign up without really knowing what the result was going to be, and then it was funded pretty quickly to over 200% of its goal. And since then, I've been looking more at Linux and talking to people in the community, and there's some really cool stuff going on. This was all before SteamOS was announced, but the drivers have totally come together, and it's just amazing, like how much my idea of what Linux was has changed, to where now I'm actually like I'm looking at it as, well, this is the area we need to specialize in. We'll see how sales go, but right now I'm looking at it like it's our primary platform.
So that is surprising. After the crowdfunding campaign concluded, I mean, how was the response to it? And along the way, what did you learn?
Really positive. I had like 2 people telling me that I should make it open source, but for the most part, people weren't bugging me about that. And I guess it wasn't even the financial response, but just the enthusiasm of it. I mean, people were telling me like, "Oh, great, this is the last piece of software I need before I can leave Windows entirely." And just based on the response, I knew there was something there. There was something to Linux gaming. And then, right after about a month after the campaign, Valve announced SteamOS, and so that was another, external confirmation. Hey, something's going on here. Let's stay on this. It looks like, so to me, Linux looks like it looks like there's this big wave, and we're right at the beginning. And I'm really glad that I got in like right at the beginning, and I'm just very curious to see how big this is going to get. I was contacted by Canonical, and I just turned in an application to speak at LinuxCon in August. So it's really interesting just meeting everyone in this ecosystem, and especially because I'm kind of an outsider to it until like a year ago, anyways.
So the original target for the crowdfunding campaign was it $20,000, I think? Do you feel like how did you go about estimating the costs of porting the engine and the editing tool set?
It actually, I wasn't really estimating costs. I just said to myself, if I can't raise 20,000 on Kickstarter, then nobody would have bought it anyways. So I just said it there, and it was really about testing the market.
Do you feel like it was a lot of work to bring Linux support online? Because I think you did the OpenGL render at the same time, is that right?
That was interesting because 3.0 was launched with a focus on mobile, and we had an OpenGL 2 and OpenGL ES2 renderer. And the feedback I was getting, quickly was saying, hey, we want you to be focusing on PC graphics. We want you to be doing the good high-end Leadwerks graphics. You should be using OpenGL 4. And so I sort of did that at the same time. The porting process to Linux was, the engine itself was easy. My biggest concern going into this was that the drivers would be problematic because I'd heard that Linux drivers were terrible. And to my surprise, with ATI and NVIDIA, I did not encounter one driver bug. Intel HD graphics, unfortunately, they don't support OpenGL 4 with their drivers yet. So that's something, if I do get to speak at LinuxCon, that's something I'm going to be like really pointing out. Hey, OpenGL 4 is awesome. Intel needs to support this because their hardware is totally capable of running our engine otherwise.
So do you feel that along the way as you kind of work towards adding Linux support in, do you feel that there were any particular hurdles that stood out, or any pleasant surprises along the way that you found?
Yeah, the drivers, of course, that I talked about, that was a very pleasant surprise because, a few years ago on Windows when I wrote Leadwerks 2, I was spending months back and forth with ATI and NVIDIA getting them to fix different driver bugs. And today the situation with OpenGL 4, because the API is so streamlined, and because they've just had time to really figure out how to write good drivers, the driver situation today is just amazing. The biggest problem with the project turned out to be the user interface. I was using GTK for the user interface, and some of the problems were due to just the wrapper code that I had some bugs in it. And I believe some of the problems were due to sort of the asynchronous nature of GTK. It's like you can set a value, and then you query that value immediately, and it's not the value you just set until you wait and get a message back that, okay, from like the Windows server. I don't really know the details of it. That did cause a lot of problems, and it just took a lot of trial and error and using the software myself before I could overcome those. Because of the user interface difficulties, the project was delayed by 3 months, but I did get it out.
So you're still using GTK2 for the interface, is that right?
Yeah, I had a couple of people suggest Qt, but the problem with that is that Qt has their own specific structure you have to conform to. It's not just, whereas GTK, I can just plug it into our abstraction layer, and it doesn't require me to alter the program. If I had used Qt, Qt might have been a great choice from the very start, but it would have also meant rewriting the entire editor from scratch, which, that would take probably over a year.
Do you have plans at this point to migrate to GTK3 at all?
I can't answer that right now.
So, not having been that familiar with the project, are there some good examples of either demos that come with it or people that have used it to make some interesting things?
Yeah, it's distributed on Steam right now, so you can actually go on there and see all the videos and screenshots people are making. There's some pretty cool stuff. And then the previous version, it was used to make the game Hoodwink. It was used to make Combat Helo, and Dangerous Rays is another game that it actually took the guy a few years to make, but it was just released a couple days ago using the previous version. And then, as time goes by, we'll get more and more third-party games made with it.
Sure.
The editor itself also, the engine itself right now, it also comes with 8 different tutorial levels. So it just shows you little different aspects of gameplay, and then like one of them is like a full game level you can play through and kill monsters. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
And that sort of example stuff's really helpful to have.
Yeah, definitely.
So, where can people buy Leadwerks at the moment, especially on Linux?
Right now, you can get the whole thing on leadwerks.com, Leadwerks. It's available on Steam only for Windows right now. For some reason, when I initialize the Steam library, only in release mode, I get a crash right now, and I need to do some more debugging to figure that out. Whoever has it on Steam, the Linux build will just automatically get added one day soon. And then on Monday, I'm going to try to have it up in the Ubuntu Software Center.
Awesome.
Oh, you have dealt with these people. I've heard mixed things about the Ubuntu Software Center approval process. How has that been working out for you so far?
I don't know. I filled out the application, and I'm just waiting for the guy who's doing the Debian package for me. I'm waiting for the final package from him, and then I guess I just have to upload that and send it in. I've been talking to Canonical since the Kickstarter campaign, so I think if I just submit it, I think it'll just appear. I'm assuming so.
That would be the ideal scenario.
Now you've got me worried.
Nah, don't be worried. Though something that might be worrying you is competition like Unreal Engine 3 and CryEngine. They have been usually fairly high-priced, high-end engines, but they changed their pricing models and are really sniping for the indie market now, going for Unity's big market share with their really low-cost monthly subscriptions. What are your thoughts on that?
CryEngine and Unreal, I love both of them for different reasons. They've both been free, Unreal at least has been free since before Leadwerks even existed. So those big AAA game engines, they're just kind of a different kind of approach to game development. So I don't really worry too much about them because they're really designed for large studios. And when you're an individual making a game or you're a small team making a game, the constraints are a little bit different. Like your man hours become a huge issue. So the way I look at it is, if we're just doing this right now with a couple little features in the art pipeline. In fact, I was working on this right before this call. If me and my team can put a few hours into the art pipeline and just make it a little bit faster, then we cumulatively save like hundreds and thousands of hours for everybody in our community. And so we have this really strong focus on just making the speed of development as fast as possible. I go through sometimes in the highly repetitive tasks. I'll go through and like count how many mouse clicks it takes to do something, and if it's too many, then I'll find some way to improve the speed. So we just have a really strong emphasis on keeping things simple, making it understandable, and ensuring that individuals and small teams of developers can put a good game out quickly. I expect that Unreal and Crysis will always probably have more features than Leadwerks, but it's really about what you can do with those features. So if somebody's able to make something with Unreal, that's great. But we just focus on the people who want to be able to rapidly develop their own games.
On that note, how is a Blender plugin or integration coming along?
Good question. So because the delay with the GTK stuff, the Blender plugin got pushed off. It's still on the way, and I'm working out some little details in the art pipeline right now. That's good to do right before I have the Blender plugin made. I'm thinking what I'm actually going to do is write some C code that just sort of provides a general purpose API for building Leadwerks models, and then it'll take care of the file format for you. And then I think if we do that, then I can use that to get the Blender plugin done faster and cheaper, and then also use it to get other plugins done, like for 3D Code or 3D Studio Max or whatever else. But the Blender plugin is definitely high priority. I need to get that done, and I would expect that within the next 30 days.
That's a statement.
From the perspective of designing and implementing your deployment options, have you found supporting different Linux versions or different Linux distros to be a different kind of challenge to supporting different versions of macOS or different versions of Windows, or have you found it to be a similar kind of thing?
Well, at this time, I mean, from the start of this project, I was very clear that we're going to target one distro. We're going to target the latest LTS version of Ubuntu, and that's it. There's been a couple of instances where things came up where I was able to make it easier for other people to run the software on other distributions. But I think the proper approach here is to focus on one distro and then sort of expect everyone else to conform to that when possible. And it's not really a matter of saying I like this one better or picking the best one or saying you like this brand better. It's really a matter of efficiency. I mean, it's easier if we all sort of focus on one and then branch out from there if needed and just try to I'm hoping that like the Linux Mint guys, if there's like something that they need to do to have Leadwerks running, then if we all just sort of follow this Ubuntu 14.04 64-bit LTS, if more people just sort of follow that as a standard, then it will actually be easier for the other distros to do whatever they need to. So the answer to that is right now I don't really attempt to run it on other distros. And although I know like probably half our Linux users are doing that, it's kind of, at this point it's kind of use at your own risk, and we'll try to work it out when we can.
So when Leadwerks for Linux goes to Steam, will you be targeting the Steam runtime so you kind of don't have that problem, at least on that specific part of your retail chain? So everybody that buys it on Steam knows if Steam games are going to work, Leadwerks will work because of Steam runtime?
It's complicated because Leadwerks uses a lot of APIs and libraries that Steam doesn't necessarily provide because it's a software. I mean, the whole idea of software in Steam is a new one. The idea of Linux applications in Steam is a new one. The idea of Linux software applications on Steam is two new ideas together. So it's kind of something I'm still working out at this point. There's actually a couple of different ways I can do it. What I've got going right now is the first time it runs, the application automatically launches an install script that downloads the dependencies. And I'm still exploring this area. It's fairly complicated, and I'm new to it, and it's kind of an area that nobody really knows, because like the guys who are packaging experts, they don't necessarily know Steam that well, and the guys that are Steam experts don't necessarily know the Linux packaging system that well. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's kind of fun to be breaking new territory like this.
Do you think that there's an opportunity to use Steam features like Workshop, for example, to allow developers using tools on Steam to be able to share content and resources, but also to be able to potentially publish their own stuff in that kind of less formal way?
Have you been reading my business plan? Okay. Yeah, I've kind of hinted at this. So I'll give you guys a little exclusive info. I'm planning to set up a system like you described. At first, it's just going to be part of Leadwerks, but it'll allow you to publish. We'll start with Lua games because that can be safely sandboxed. But it is completely possible to. Let me back up again. Let me back up a little bit. I'm working with the workshop system, the Steam Workshop system, and this is Valve's system for allowing players to create user-generated content and share it with other people. And it's really amazing because it's like the system I've always dreamed of. When you upload a model or a texture or something to be used in a game, it gets a unique global identifier. And so when somebody else uses that model in a scene to make their game, instead of storing a file path, it stores that global unique identifier. And when someone else loads that map up in their editor, it just grabs that item from the Steam server and displays it in your map. So it's really it's like this big thumb drive in the sky that we all have access to and can all work off of at the same time, and I really love it because it sort of takes all these different nodes in the system, all these different creators, and it allows us to work together in a way that's really unlike anything that's been done before. The system supports derivative works, so that means that if you make a texture of a brick, like a brick wall, and someone else uses that texture to make a house, when they publish their house and somebody else downloads the house, it'll go back and reference the original texture. So instead of like feeling like somebody ripped you off, you actually want other people to use and reuse your work, because that means that your stuff will become more popular, and eventually we'll monetize it potentially. But right now, I just want to make sure that everyone's having fun with it and make sure that it's a success while it's a free system. So it's not too much of a stretch to take this same system and say, well, we could put entire games on Steam and just publish them that way as like a way to build a fan base, get away from the Steam Greenlight process. And Valve has not given me any objection to this, is what I'll say. So that's a distinct, that's what I want to do. After the assets in the workshop are working, then I want to be able to publish Lua games directly to Steam without going through Greenlight.
It's potentially pretty exciting, I think. The possibility there for game developers to be rolling stuff out via Steam's stuff, by Steam's distribution
Workshop.
Via Workshop as sort of maybe a precursor to like a proper full Steam launch. It sort of seems like a nice way to engage with users and build community around your stuff in a way it doesn't really feel like it's as doable with Greenlight, because you've got so many titles that don't exist or are a pencil sketch or are a completed game. It's so diverse a range of production state of stuff there that it's very difficult to filter through.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's another potential area that's really exciting. That's having sort of instant deployments to SteamOS. So I know SteamOS is still a little bit out there in the future, and most people haven't played with the hardware yet. But I mean, imagine if you're working on a game on your computer, and then you can just press a button and publish it, and then go play it on your Xbox or your PlayStation. That's what it's going to be like with SteamOS.
It's a really interesting, sort of alternative way. Potentially the rapid turnaround time there is that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree, and it's it's probably once your game gets a certain level of popularity, of course, you're not going to want to keep publishing it through the Leadwerks workshop. But it's a way to get people playing your game immediately. It's a way to get feedback, and if I do my job right, then it's going to be a way to build a fan base really quickly. Instead of just sort of putting something out on the web, you can put something in the Leadwerks workshop and have people playing it immediately.
And I imagine that if you've got a community of Leadwerks users who have some experience or interest in development themselves, that the opportunities for critique and creative cross-pollination and that sort of stuff are probably going to be higher than it would be if you just threw it out on a random website and got people to check it out.
Yeah, totally. Networking effects like crazy.
Exciting.
It probably opens up some possibilities for people to just do reviewing and things like that to help filter out what's really good in the community. That's pretty interesting. And what else is interesting is Steam has this web API. So I don't know, maybe somebody will build a website of like all the latest, coolest Leadwerks workshop games and a review of them. I mean, when you sort of narrow your focus and create like a little tiny community with a bunch of people talking to each other, I think I'm just really curious to see like all the cool stuff that's going to happen from this, like you guys are sort of describing. Certainly lots of possibilities. It'll be interesting.
So, do you want to conclude this with an elevator pitch?
Unless there's any investors in the audience, probably not. But I will conclude with it saying that Leadwerks is a powerful and easy to use game development system. Just check it out and check out the videos and screenshots. We'll try to get either a demo or a free weekend up soon, and it'll be available Monday in the Ubuntu Software Center. It's actually available right now on leadwerks.com. And if you like what we're doing, then just leave a comment in a video or something, and just let me know what you think of it, and if you're excited about bringing this kind of technology to Linux.
I did have one other question. What experience and proficiency would you expect somebody to have to find Leadwerks to be approachable?
Good question. We divide development into 3 layers. At the very top layer, it's just map design. You can just go through and create your map with the built-in level design tools. And then we actually have 8 tutorials that don't involve any programming. All you do is connect objects in the flow graph. So that's the very top level. It doesn't require any programming at all. Of course, you'll run into some limitations sooner or later, and at that point, you will want to open up the Lua scripts. Lua is the game industry's kind of script language of choice. It's used in probably thousands of games, Crysis, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, and yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading the text and getting distracted. So
Very easy to do.
So once you have some custom functionality that you want to implement, you can just open up the Lua scripts and either modify the behavior that's there or create your own script. And so that's the second level, is Lua scripting. And then the third level is the direct C++ programming. At its heart, Leadwerks is a programming library with a pretty straightforward API. So the advanced programmers, they can drill down to the C++ level and access everything that way. And what I really like about this approach is it actually enables people at all 3 of these layers to sort of work together simultaneously on a project. You can have your script programmer, ideally they're going to be writing a bunch of sort of general purpose behavior scripts that your game uses. And then your map designer is going to be using those and telling the scripter what he needs. And then, at the very lowest level, if it's needed, it's not always in all games, your C++ programmer is going to be doing whatever customization, importing external C++ libraries, all that kind of stuff. So I think dividing the structure of the work into those 3 layers is really beneficial. And it also allows us to work together more easily with the Steam Workshop, because people can publish a script that's just for one specific behavior, and then other people can use it, and it just sort of works the same in all games, regardless of what the C++ code is doing.
Fantastic. So on that note, we might move along to just a recap of some recent Steam community stuff. Recapping past events, a couple of weeks ago we had our Big Guns of Icarus event, which ended up lasting for 12 hours, with people dropping in and out as their time zones went in and out of sensible hours. I think all up we had 20 to 30 people hanging out and blowing up airships. It was pretty sweet. You were there for that, Nemoder?
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
I was also there briefly. I was there in the beginning. It started off interesting, and it sounds like it really went on interesting.
It was cool. I think there were only 3 of us who played for that entire length of time, but it was really nice to be able to get to play the game with people that don't normally cross time zones with when we have events on. So it was kind of nice to just touch base with a few new players and get some experience up with some different crews, more diverse crews than we'd normally have. We also had a little Racers Street event, which seemed to go pretty well. A couple of lag issues slowed the game down, but I think that was mostly my fault because I was the highest ping person, and when I left the first game, everybody else could drive.
Yeah, I enjoyed the game. I just felt like it be a lot more fun at LAN parties or something where you're not so constrained by the ping.
It still wasn't too bad. I mean, considering I had like 500 ping at one point, it seemed to be running okay.
Yeah, I didn't drop people out. It was just really confusing to know what was going on.
Yeah, had some people with delayed starts, but it still counted the time from when they crossed the start line, so it looked like you were first, and then suddenly you weren't. We had a Worms Reloaded event, and we had a Half-Life 2 Synergy event, which the guys... I didn't get to play much of that, but the other guys went entirely through Half-Life 2, and when I left, I think Dishara and a couple of other people were still going through Half-Life 2 Episode 1, so that was another big marathon event, and pretty popular too. We might pick up next month and do another Synergy run, I think. It was good.
I'd love to try some of those custom maps for that game because most of us have played through the campaigns and know them pretty well, but some of the custom, maybe they're more Sven-like, with waves of monsters or puzzles to solve or something, but it looks interesting.
Yeah. And on the horizon, after the show, we've got a Dota 2 event scheduled. Tomorrow tomorrow on the 3rd of May, we have our Nuclear Dawn Linux launch celebration event, which is being done in conjunction with the Nuclear Dawn Battle Society, and the Game Connect guys are supporting us as well. So we're hoping to have a really good turnout for that. And we also have Counter-Strike Source on the horizon as well. A couple of SteamLUG people have been participating in the recent LD Game Jam. Tiddy worked on a diving game with his custom-built engine. It was kind of neat to watch him streaming while I was working on my own projects. Apparently there were a couple of other SteamLUG people, but I haven't quite crossed paths with the rest of them and worked out what was going on. And we also had Marco Rosenberg join us for Game Club when we were still doing Book of Unwritten Tales. And starting next week, we're going to be doing one of the new humongous entertainment titles that supports Linux, Spy Fox, which is sort of a kid-oriented point-and-click game with Linux support. But moving straight on past community stuff, the Steam client had a fairly big update. Either of you guys had a chance to check that out?
I've updated, but I haven't looked through all the changes yet.
I'm actually not really aware of these big updates because I'm constantly in the beta channel and just get snippets of it all the time, and this is just stuff that has already been in the beta for a while mostly.
They still don't let us stream with the in-home streaming from a Linux machine to a Windows machine. It works the other way, but I guess they still don't support it from Linux.
Yeah, they turned it off recently, and I've been keeping an eye on the patch notes to see if it comes back, but I haven't spotted it. It's my hope that it's going to come back sooner rather than later. It's pretty disappointing to lose that.
Yeah.
I had recently had the opportunity to try Steam in VR mode this morning. There's currently mixed messages about whether or not it works, and so I sat there and messed around with it quite a bit to get it going. And finally, when it did work, the Y-axis on my dev kit was reversed in Steam, but not in any of the other demo apps or other device applications I've got that support HMDs. And then when I went to launch TF2, it hung, so it still feels like it's not quite ready for consumption, at least on Linux. I'm gonna keep playing around with that and try and get it working.
Are you talking about actually running the Steam interface in virtual reality?
Yeah, big picture in VR mode, yeah.
Oh wow, that would be interesting. I know Steam has their own, actually, like part of Steamworks SDK is a virtual reality API, and it's kind of interesting because it's an abstraction layer that supports multiple hardware.
Right.
So if you don't necessarily want to be stuck with Facebook VR, then this sort of gives you the option to target multiple hardware at once.
At the moment, it's just a wrapper around the Oculus thing only. I don't think they have any other stuff that they're supporting right now. But yeah, as far as having kind of more open-ended options go, it feels like it's not a bad idea to target. With another game that I'm working on, we're using OpenHMD. Actually, for a couple of projects I'm involved with, we're using OpenHMD, which aims to provide a similar kind of thing with abstracted away from the device-specific SDKs to have a more generic API.
I'll actually check that out because I'm kind of like I really don't want to get. What do you guys think about the Oculus acquisition?
It's
Yeah, I think nobody is really happy with it, but so far on other casted consensus has been, let's see Android 8, as long as they get a proper device out that fulfills the original goal, that is not forced into Facebook. It's okay, but if we only get Facebook VR, like you said, we have a problem with that.
I mentioned it in a previous cast, but I guess because I was a backer of that, and I have dev kit sitting on my desk right now. I backed the project because I wanted to see a company take VR from being more or less a joke to something that was viable at the consumer level and interesting to the industry. And I think that's already been achieved. Like, that legacy has been realized, and as disappointing as it is to see it go somewhere else, and as disheartening as it is to feel like you've just thrown money at raising acquisition value for for a bunch of managers who've probably done very, very well out of the deal. It's kind of, that's the thing with crowdfunding campaigns. You can't expect that you'll get everything right every time, and I feel like it could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, I think the crowdfunding campaign, what it did is it really brought VR to the forefront and made it the next big thing. But I also have the feeling that Oculus VR's sort of part in this story is kind of over, in my view. I can't. It's just kind of a feeling.
It does feel like they're no longer they're not the underdog anymore. They're not the indie developer that everyone wants to root for anymore. And while they may still make devices that get adopted by people, it feels like it's harder to be passionate about them. I know I felt quite demoralized when I heard the news.
Yeah, in that light, it's good to see that Sony came out with a VR headset that looks acceptable to good, actually. So we know there's now competition going in that specific price segment and with these goals in mind.
And they do raise a point, is that Facebook have the resources to make manufacturing infrastructure that it's just economies of scale wouldn't make it possible for Oculus to really do on their own. And while I would have rather seen the drive for custom built VR hardware to be brought about by like some kind of consortium or alliance of HMD manufacturers. I mean, I guess if it accelerates the production of technology to a point where we end up with other people making hardware that other devices end up using, then that's kind of positive as well as an outcome.
Well, the thing is, the Facebook, it doesn't actually give them any of the missing capabilities that firm has. Oculus VR is a research firm. That's what they're good at. They don't have any manufacturing capabilities. They don't really have any materials procurement. They don't have any advertising. They don't have any distribution channels. And when you add Facebook into the equation, it doesn't actually add any of those things as far as I can tell. So all those missing capabilities are going to have to be acquired by purchasing another company that does that, or they're going to have to be built, or it's going to have to be outsourced. So I really don't understand the move there. That's all I've got to say about that.
Well, I just think it means Facebook is going to have to put more money into it, to make it work, and they seem committed to doing that. So we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah, I did find in their press release about it, in Facebook's press release, they talked about wanting to invest in and being excited about persistent VR platforms, or what do they call it? Persistent social platforms was what they were saying, and that's not what the Rift is. That's not what Oculus' focus has been so far. That's more kind of augmented reality type stuff where it's not going to get in the way of everyday type activity. If you walk down the street with one of these on, it's going to end badly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds more like they're excited by the concept of things like Google Glass, and it's odd to see that mentioned in a press release about acquisition of a company that's got a different focus.
Yeah, it's somehow as if Zuckerberg didn't know the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality.
But they've managed to, they've managed to acquire some people since then. we were probably going to mention it later, but it looks like Carmack's move to Oculus has brought about some crankies from ZeniMax. And you guys are going to make me talk about it, aren't you?
No, I have one comment about it, and that is that, from my point of view, and this will sound harsh, these non-compete clauses that make you pretty much completely beholden to one company, even if you do something in your free time, it belongs to them. That to me is slavery. That completely disowns you in some part.
I don't understand why people sign them.
This would be illegal here. You couldn't put this in a work contract in my country, but in the US it seems to be a pretty standard fare.
The land of free slaves.
Well, I don't have much sympathy for Carmack, after he sold it to ZeniMax in the first place.
Not like that.
Yeah, I have to say, it did seem a bit like a, yeah. It's one of those things.
And let's get into proper gaming news with jolly news. Some good games.
Hooray!
Like the new Humble Weekly Bundle, which features some Linux games like Awesomenauts, Rocketbirds, and Sanctum 2, which isn't advertised on the page as being a Linux game, but there is a Linux beta you have to opt in on Steam, and you can play it. Have you played Sanctum 2 yet?
I thought you said happy news.
It's happy news! It's a game on Linux, a popular one.
So yeah, there's nothing in that bundle, but if you were keen on any of those titles, it's a good way to get a hold of them. It's possible that some of the others might have Linux support in the future, but it's not being advertised or offered at the moment.
We played a little bit of Sanctum 2, and it's perfectly playable. It's got some bugs, though, and hopefully those will get fixed before our event next month.
That's this month now.
Or this month, sorry. We've already in May. Darn it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Nemoder and I have been playing. I mean, you and I have been playing a little bit of Sanctum 2, and though it's got some rough edges, it feels like there's something fun at the core of it, that really shines through.
Yeah, the bugs are they make it hard to play, but you can see that they shouldn't be too hard to fix, and so it's not like it's going to be game breaking.
Yeah, we're expecting to see updates to it between now and our event, so keep an eye out for those. And if you're interested, the Humble Bundle's probably a good way to pick up the game. Thanks heaps for joining us, Josh, and we will be in touch and let you know when the archive goes up.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Cheers.
Was a pleasure. See ya. Where did we leave off?
Well, we got the Shadowrun Steam sale. If you're keen to pick that up and haven't yet, it's probably worth playing through. Pretty good single player game.
Are you being abducted by an alien? I can hear a tractor beam coming at you.
I don't think so.
You have a fan or something on in the background?
There's like a heater in the other room, but I don't think it's that loud.
Doesn't matter. It's all good.
So yeah, Shadowrun on sale.
Shadowrun. I haven't played it. Is it good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. You have to like the whole genre, but it's pretty well done.
Though, if you are more into opener RPGs, you should probably pick up the DLC. That's definitely more of what people expected from the game in the first place. More open hub areas where you can approach objectives in the order you like. It's also on sale, but not as deeply discounted as the base game.
So Double Fine have announced that Hack and Slash, their upcoming hacking RPG, is going to be available on Steam Early Access on the 6th. They've launched a rap trailer, which is sort of a parody or a take on the Zelda rap trailer, and it's worth a watch. Have you guys been following Hack and Slash at all? Do you know what it's about?
Not a bit. You need to tell me.
Yeah, I've looked at the videos for it, and it does look interesting. I mean, most previous hacking games have been, the whole cyberpunk, you're the hacker and there's no metagame.
Yeah.
But with this, it looks like it's an actual game that you're, playing through, and then you can alter it to do other things.
So, like, Brendan, in interviews and stuff, has been talking about how, rather than intentionally creating mechanics, creating hacking mechanics per se, what they're doing is exposing the existing debug commands and debug interfaces that they are using to develop the game, such as turning on collision detection boxes, turning on line of sight detection cones and stuff like that. But also they're providing players with the ability to manipulate the memory registers for variables. Apparently you are on the fly editing binaries and stuff to change the way that the game behaves. It's kind of interesting, and if they integrate Steamworks support, I'm kind of really curious about how that's going to play with the DRM, since that's usually the sort of stuff that DRM tries to detect.
Yeah, it looks pretty gamified though. I mean, it doesn't sound like you're really directly altering the memory. You're just sending a command to change a variable.
I'm not sure. I mean, Brendan sort of says that it's linked up to the kinds of tools and the kinds of techniques that you would use when hacking directly.
It just seems like it's mimicking that more than it's actually doing that. But I could be wrong.
That's what it looks like. I mean, the interface it's an interface,
Right.
And you're not editing anything in hex. You're not editing anything in binary. But kind of interested to see what it looks like and how it runs and how it behaves when when the game becomes available on the 6th.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Well, I might reach out and see if we can get Brendan onto the cast. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah. So I've been following this game Factorio for a while now. I funded their Indiegogo campaign, and over the last year they've really ramped up production on it. They've replaced all the artwork and just added tons of features, and they just released a new trailer yesterday. So if you're at all interested in kind of management or building games or things like OpenTDD, stuff like that, definitely check the trailer out.
It looks kind of I've only had a quick chance to look at the trailer and a couple of screenshots. It looks visually dense.
Well, you can zoom in and out to whatever fits your view, and the trailer is kind of its own little thing, and it does change the camera a little more than you would in the game, but and it does look really complicated in the trailer because they've got basically a completed base. But when you're playing the game, you just slowly add on and learn as you go, so it's not that complex.
Cool. I mentioned it earlier, but Crypt of the Necrodancer is available to pre-orders now on Windows and Mac, I think. Developers just tweeted to me just before we started recording saying that they're hoping to have Linux versions available this coming week. But they also tweeted earlier saying, FYI, we support Linux because we love Linux. Linux usually doesn't sell enough to justify the extra effort, but we do it anyway out of love. I had a little bit of a chat with them. It turns out that that's them talking about experiences that one of the developers had with several, more than several, 7 games that they'd previously published on Linux back in 2004 to 2009, I think it was. And it's kind of interesting to kind of think about the way that things have changed between now and then. They mentioned that the way that they were tracking the sales were because they sold Linux versions separate from Windows versions, and so that gave them direct access to stats and knowing what platforms people were playing on. But they acknowledged that that's not what they do today. That everyone gets access on all the platforms that they're supporting now.
I kind of wonder how they were selling it before, if it was just on their website or through some other format, because I haven't heard of their previous games.
In 2004, we might even be talking about boxed copies around that time frame.
It's possible. I think one of the big things that's changed between now and then is that I think it's a bit easier to reach out to Linux gamers with the kind of marketing that you would reach out to Windows gamers with. I mean, back when everything was on shelves, it was a lot harder to get in touch with with Linux gamers. Because stores were full of Windows stuff, and that's not usually where you go looking for Linux games.
Yeah.
But so that might be something to have a look into. John Warner from Over the Moon Games, who joined us for Season 1, Episode 10, I believe, says that he's planning to release Episode 1 of The Fall on June the 1st. he says to say hi to all of our listeners, and we're looking at getting him back on at some stage after it goes live. I've been playing the beta, and it's coming together. We've identified a couple of platform-specific bugs, which I've been giving a hand identifying and hopefully ironing out. But it's looking solid, and looking forward to playing the game. Have you guys been following the fall at all?
Not really, no.
Not much. It's not an uninteresting game, but I'm just not following that many unfinished games at the moment. I have my own lot of Kickstarter pledged games, and others I wait for until they are done.
Yeah, there's so much going on at the moment that you cannot stay abreast of everything. But it's John and the team are building something that's pretty atmospheric, and the story looks like it's pretty compelling. It's still in a little bit of a state of flux as far as the transition from alpha to beta brought along some interesting story adjustments that changed the tone of some of the early stuff a little bit. But it's good to see that kind of refinement happen. I really enjoy watching the watching the game evolve, and that's a big kick that I get out of most of the in-development games that I've supported. I might have mentioned earlier that I've been working on Neverball stuff. We got a release coming up, probably this coming week, if things go the way they look to be going. It's going to have a whole stack of new features, including VR support via OpenHMD. It'll be the first release to have our new OpenGL renderer, and hopefully will spawn some more mobile versions of the game than we've had previously, which is kind of exciting. We've got a bunch of new levels, new features, rotating entities, and new balls and things, and exciting for anyone who is interested in checking out a awesome ball rolling game.
The same changes going into Neverpet?
Yeah. So pretty much all the changes are migrated across automatically, just because the code bases they come out of the same repo, and so they use a lot of shared code. Cool. I think there was some discussion on a GitHub issue about some lighting stuff that may or may not have made its way into Neverpet, but I haven't had a chance to read that up yet. But some of the rotating entity stuff becomes a really interesting thing in Neverpet, or allows us to create much more dynamic levels. Instead of just having linearly moving platforms or whatever, we can now have fully rotating discs,
windmills
and windmills and things, which are kind of exciting.
Scapegoat 2
Hooray.
has pretty good Linux sales, and that's kind of interesting to hear a lot more companies talk about that kind of thing.
Yeah, they're citing I think it's about 5%, isn't it? And that's been steady since release for the first month.
It's surprising how in some games we buy distinctly over market share if you take the Steam hardware survey as a gauge, and in other games there's almost nothing there, like some stats have shown. But it seems like when a game is selling good but not extremely good on Linux, you can expect 5% as your sales amount for Linux, which is a couple of times our current market share, which is nice.
I'm going to be perhaps a little bit judgmental and say that maybe some of the stats stuff has to do with the quality of a game and the quality of its port. And I think that we're at a point now where a lot of Linux gamers are feeling like they've had all the bundles that they can handle. They've got all the Linux games coming, more stuff than they can play, and are starting to be a little bit more discerning. I think that kind of shows when you do get above market share or above apparent market share sales figures. That's kind of what I think it might represent.
I wouldn't doubt it, but there might be other factors.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
Sadly, we do not really have the data for that.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be a reason why Gary Newman isn't selling anywhere near to market share of Rust.
Yeah.
And that reason might be because of some comments, but it could be other stuff.
I guess it's probably a combination of things as well.
Games that were already on Windows and they already bought them, and so they either don't want to buy them again, or if they don't transfer directly over.
And it's not necessarily hot at the moment, I guess. Like Garry's Mod's been around. Everyone who knows about it knows about it. No one's going to buy it just because it's new.
I'm talking specifically about Rust.
Yeah. But that had like Linux specific issues when it launched, didn't it?
I do not know. I do not own this game.
Yeah, I seem to recall a lot of people concerned about, I think libraries were missing, and there were some input issues as well from memory. And those sorts of things, they're high impact. Word spreads pretty quickly if a game doesn't work properly on Linux. People know about it.
Yeah.
But I think also, just there are a lot of people who already own Garry's Mod and who, might end up playing it on Linux but aren't necessarily going to dive straight back into it. I think any stats for an existing game are going to be horrendously skewed, and that it's titles that...
Yeah, absolutely. But I hope developers are smart enough to look at it only from the perspective from when they were starting to sell Linux versions compared to the other systems that it was already on, and not ridiculous notions of, I will now compare this to my game on other platforms 1 year ago when it started.
I think it's deeper than that, though. Like, I bought Garry's Mod, I don't know, 5-6 years ago now, I think. And I haven't fired it up in Linux. But that doesn't mean that I'm a purchaser who doesn't own it and run Linux.
Yeah. I think developers need to look more at, the hype surrounding a game and bringing it to a new platform, and if that marketing's, beneficial not just for that platform but for, everybody in general, I think it pays off in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really healthy to try and view legacy titles that are, and I would consider Garry's Mod legacy. Legacy titles that are being released for Linux now as being an investment in building a Linux user base for whatever your next game's going to be. Unreal have launched their 4.1 update, which includes Linux publishing support, apparently.
Yes.
So the editor itself doesn't have Linux support yet, but you can now deploy for SteamOS and Linux. Apparently they've added in some new templates and a couple of other features here and there. It's nice to see them recognizing the contributors in the release notes. It's really, really positive that that part of it, part of the way that they're embracing this more open aspect to publishing the engine source and making it available to their development community is also involving recognizing them and their contributions as well.
It's definitely a change, a big change for Unreal. From the engine where we couldn't hardly tell what was happening with the Linux efforts in the previous versions, to something that is so out in the open and is being talked about a lot. It's nice to see.
Still would like to see acknowledgement of some of those previous unknowns.
That is not what PR does. It's forgotten and buried, and it will stay there.
Only as long as people leave it there.
Fighting the good fight. All by yourself.
Yep. Apparently, a little while back, a developer from... Who are they?
Gearbox Interactive?
Yeah, them.
And it wasn't just a developer, it was a head honcho president type. Randy Pitchford, he is called. And, well, there was a bit of a twittering about a potential Borderlands Linux port, Borderlands 2 that is, and, well, he said he would talk to people, and then he said he talked to people, and it's not going to happen. That was pretty much all there was to it. And people were getting a bit hyped. But words are wind.
Yeah, I didn't really understand why people seemed to be very excited about it. I mean, people showed me the tweet and asked me what I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't really mean anything. And, it's the kind of thing that you look at and you go, well, wait and see what happens.
Yeah, we shouldn't expect anything from a so console-focused developer like Gearbox anyway. Eventually they might be there if Steam boxes are going to be a success, but they're probably not going to be the vanguard. They will, or van or whatever, they will not be at the forefront of it. They will come along when it's safe, and not 1 minute sooner.
Yeah, but these things are still happening, and they will continue to happen. It's not something that we've moved past, because I know that you go back 5 years or so, and people were kind of wary of possible Linux ports that were being announced, and wary of being burned or being disappointed. But I think people still need to acknowledge that that's probably still going to happen, especially now that it's becoming something that more people are looking into and assessing whether or not it's right for them. So apparently Full Bore Part 2 is coming soon. I'm not really familiar with Full Bore. Are you guys?
I am not. I do not know what it is.
It's a kind of platformery thing from memory, and you play as a pig, and that's about all I know. The latest Steam releases, is there anything in there that's caught your eye? I mentioned earlier that the second round of Humongous Entertainment games has landed, which includes a couple of Freddy Fish titles, Spy Fox 2, and another Putt-Putt title.
Yeah, there are a few games. The Last Federation, for example. I know it's still kind of an underground game, but it made a couple of headlines with YouTubers, and it seems to be quite interesting. You play some kind of last of his kind alien that tries to build a new federation, and you use diplomacy and treachery and all that good stuff. It's basically Game of Thrones in space with strange aliens and turn-based shoot-'em-up combat, where you play in short intervals of a couple of seconds to make your moves, but then it goes into bursts of real-time action where you can do your stuff.
Interesting.
It is quite interesting, seems to have a lot of depth. It's definitely on my keep an eye on that list. If it's going to be on a somewhat significant sale, I'm definitely going to pick that one up.
I spotted that there's another application in there that's supporting Linux, which is the Wing IDE, which is some Python IDE that I'd never heard of previously. It's interesting to see productivity tools like this and Leadwerks, which shouldn't be far away, finding their way onto Steam. It's going to be interesting to see how Linux, because Steam's kind of oriented at gamers, so it's going to be kind of Linux gamers that this is targeted at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see how Linux gamers take to having this kind of productivity software published in this kind of way on Linux, and how well that's received.
I don't know how popular that would be, because Python seems to be quite well supported with all the open source tools out there. I mean, it's one of the languages you get installed by default on pretty much every Linux distribution.
Yeah, I have to say I'm kind of in that department as well. I would probably prefer to use my normal IDEs rather than buy something on Steam. But it's still interesting.
And there is another game I want to point out, and that's Necro, that just entered early access pretty much before we started the cast. It became available to download, and I can't for the life of me quite figure out what this game is about now. It used to be a game about summoning undead and pretty much letting them go at the living and conquering and other stuff, but it seems to have changed quite a bit, so I definitely will need to check that one out. I funded it on Kickstarter back when it was up, and let's just see how good this is. But it looks promising. I would definitely recommend everybody to keep an eye on that if you're remotely interested in this kind of game.
Anything in there that stands out to you, Nemoder?
I don't recognize much of anything on that.
Well, we can see Jagged Alliance 1 Gold Edition there, yeah.
That is a game we know is good. Is that DOSBox, do you know?
I haven't looked into it, I'm not sure. I guess it probably is. I spot Out of the Park Baseball 15, which a couple of people in the SteamLUG channel have been talking about. They seem pretty happy with it.
probably a bit limited to the US audience, because I can't really think of another country except maybe Japan where baseball is big.
Yeah, I can't say I find it appealing, but each their own. It's cool.
So we got breaking news that Broken Sword 5 Episode 2 has also been released.
All right, awesome. That will make people happy.
Does that include you?
I don't know. I've only played the first one, and I found that to be oddly paced, which I'm told is because I played the remastered version, which had some extra scenes and things in it. But I know that it's very well lauded, and I'm kind of interested to see what the subsequent titles are like. But I don't know whether it's something that I really feel invested in. But I do know a lot of people who are heavily into the series.
John was following that pretty closely, wasn't
I think so.
he? Or at least he was a fan of the originals.
I think he was telling me that the remastered edition is not so good.
One more comment on that. For a person that has never played Broken Sword 1 before, I found the remastered bits to be the best part of the game so far. Without nostalgia goggles on, I like them the most.
I have to say that I was surprised to learn that you don't play as Nico in the original game, and I was like, because geez, George is fairly grating.
Yeah.
Steam Greenlight a couple of days ago, a new batch was pushed out with 43 of the 75 titles supporting Linux. I spotted Flashout 2, which is this kind of sci-fi racing game, which I spotted before. Kind of interested to see that one get a bit more prominence.
Oh, I think they were demoing Flashout 2 at PAX, and it looked really good.
Yeah. It does look pretty slick. The Outcast reboot HD thing, I think we mentioned that last cast, says that it has Linux, Mac, and Windows support on Greenlight, but I noticed that it's not very likely to meet its primary goal, and it's certainly not likely to reach the stretch goal that's a little way out there. So be interesting to see if anything comes of that.
And beyond that, this list looks like stuff hardly anyone has voted for. I know almost nothing of this list.
I think I've heard of Chaos in the Darkness before. Nikki and the Robots I've heard of before. A Source looked like it could be interesting, and the Universum I think Nemoder mentioned the other day. So a couple of things that I'd come across previously, but yeah, a lot of stuff that it takes all kinds, I guess, to vote for games on Greenlight.
Yeah, I usually hold off until there's at least something that looks like it's a playable game, but we'll see.
Yeah, I do wish that that games were kind of at a certain point before they could go over that threshold. It feels like it'd be nice if there was an opportunity to put your game on Greenlight, and then when you're ready, tick a box that starts the voting process or something, and it gives you a chance to build a little bit of community, get the URL out there, let people know about it, and then when you're close enough to release that you can get onto the store fairly quickly, just put things in the right, press the right buttons and have it take off. Hopefully.
Well, Bell keeps talking about wanting to get rid of Greenlight entirely, so we'll see what happens with that, I guess.
They do, yeah. Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see where things go. I mean, I don't have any problem with stuff that I don't care about going onto Steam because of the, over 2,000 titles now. I probably don't care about 100 of them. I'll probably only care about 100 of them, and that's a fairly small ratio there. So having a few more titles that aren't interesting to me isn't necessarily a bad thing because I'm already in that kind of situation. But things do seem to flick on and off the new releases very quickly now compared to when they used to, which is an interesting double-edged sword for developers.
Yes, indeed. I mean, for developers, it's quite important to be on these front pages Whenever they are in these spots of visibility, they sell a ton more than they usually would. And being pushed out of that by just a flood of Greenlight titles isn't helping either one, not the Greenlit games nor the other developers that got on there by other means.
We mentioned the Universim a moment ago, which segues nicely into the crowdfunding segment.
Yeah, it looks like a decent game. I haven't really followed it a whole lot, but the only thing that kind of makes me wonder, it's really got that Spore feel to it, and I just hope they're not being overly ambitious with it, and they'll be able to get something out of it. But the video looks really good, with what their vision for it is.
It's funny, the first thing I thought was Spore when I looked at it. There's something about the way that the environment is presented there that just kind of has that vibe about it. And Planetary Annihilation's kind of similar as well.
Yeah, the whole kind of a cell shading and planets, yeah.
Just in the way that scale is presented. But it does look like an interesting project. And what's their target? 320,000. And they're about halfway through with 3 weeks to go.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll probably make it if they're already got that far. It's just, it doesn't have the whole creature creator thing, which really sold Spore, and that might be a good thing to keep the production going on this and make it a decent game.
It is what it is, and I think that it's very difficult to predict how anything different would have performed, because it's so big and so complex that the
biggest complaints with Spore was that it just didn't go far enough, and the amount of detail that they put into the creature creator didn't advance anywhere into the actual stages until maybe the very end, and even then it wasn't that great.
I felt that for me the biggest, the number one disappointment with that was the it was meant to be, here is a game that teaches you about how evolution kind of works and how development works and stuff.
It certainly didn't do that.
Well, it doesn't, because you can at any point, you can press a button, open up the editor, throw a few more legs on, and off you go. There's no sense of continuity between anything, and I think the loss of a restriction like that certainly made it disinteresting to me, I think. I guess I'm not good at self-imposed rules, but it just really felt like it undermined a lot of what the game was meant to be about.
It just looked like they had this great creature creator, and then they tried to tack a game on it, and they just didn't really know what they wanted to do with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when Wheelwright presented it at the 2005 GDC, it seemed like there was a vision that was at least mainly solid, I guess, and it kind of, I don't know, it showed more or less kind of the same sorts of things that are in the final game, but deeper, deeper systems.
That's been true of most of EA's stuff, though, SimCity and everything else that's come out lately.
Yeah, I don't know, I found it disappointing. I wanted Science Spore, not Goot Spore.
But, this other game, it's kind of going a different direction with the focusing more on the actual stages and less on the, the creatures and things. So it could turn out to be okay. The only thing that I'm kind of nervous about is that it's a pretty big project, and this is their first game, and so you never know in those kind of situations what'll happen. Yeah,
I was going to say, what kind of prior experience is there at the table here?
Yeah, I mean, something like FTL comes out and you get something amazing, so you never know.
But sometimes you get surprised, and that's what crowdfunding's about. Well, fingers crossed on that one. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Double Fine have announced their second Double Fine Presents title, which is Last Life, which is currently on Kickstarter. It's a story-oriented adventure game, sci-fi noir type thing, which is developed by Sam Farmer. So the Double Fine Presents thing is sort of more like a marketing or publishing arrangement where Double Fine offer some support and awareness raising for a project. They recently opened up their doors and said, "Hey, we're doing this. Anybody who's interested, get in touch." And I think they got fairly flooded with interest. But Last Life looks kind of interesting, you know. It's got this stylized lo-fi 3D aesthetic to it, which is kind of nice.
It's almost got kind of an out of this world look to it.
Or like another world? Yeah, maybe.
I mean, you know, it's a little more 3D and stuff, but kind of that simplistic yet, you know, arty style. Yeah.
Yeah, like faces with no details and stuff. But you know, the game itself does look kind of interesting. It is a safe bet if you're interested in backing it. They well and truly passed their goal. It's got a week left on it. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to cover before we sign off?
I think we got through everything important, unless the chat has anything to contribute, which we have blatantly forgotten.
Alright, well, on that note, we will sign off for this SteamLUG cast. Thank you very much for sharing in this. It's been a pleasure once again.
It was fun. Good day.
See ya!
We also have several Nuclear Dawn keys to hand out to anybody who's listening in at the moment who doesn't have a copy of the game.
And when's the next event for that? Nuclear Dawn's tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
You know, giving away free stuff is hard with this community that just buys everything so eagerly.
I guess so.
I reckon so.